All right, so y'all go ahead and do the factoring and the math knowledge question for today. Pause the video, and then once everyone is finished, you can unpause the video, and I'll go over the correct answers. For this factoring, you're going to start off by removing an x because that's your greatest common factor, and you'll be left with x squared minus 8x plus 16. That will factor as x minus 4 times x minus 4, and so you can write it as x times x minus 4 squared. For the math knowledge question, we've got cheerleading squad that wants to get new uniforms, and they're going to sell candy bars for $1. For the first 200 candy bars, they get 40 cents. So we're going to say 200 times 40 cents, and that gives you $80. And then for the next 300, they receive 50 cents. And so if you multiply those, that gives you $150. So far, they have earned $230 once they sold those 500 candy bars. Then for each additional candy bar, they get 60 cents. We want to raise $350. So we're lacking $120. That's what we want to get to. And we know that we get 60 cents per candy bar. What number of items do we need to get to 120? We'll basically just take 120 and divide it by 0.6, and that gives you that the number you need to sell at that rate is 200 of them. And so we sold 200, 300, and another 200. That's a total of 700 candy bars in order to get to our $350 goal. Okay, so we are looking at lesson 97 today. We're dealing with the ambiguous case. This is going to be looking at the law of signs and how we have some ambiguity. So hopefully after this lesson you'll understand where the ambiguity comes from. So when we know the length of one side and the measure of two other parts, the measures of the three missing parts can be found, either using the law of sines. You could use the law of cosines, or maybe even sine, cosine, and tangent if you have a right triangle. If we are given the values of a pair and the third value given is another side, and we have no drawing of our triangle, we will have a problem because we don't know if we have an acute or an obtuse angle there. So if they don't tell us the picture or show it to us so that we know if we have an obtuse triangle or an acute triangle, we'll have an issue. It might be possible to use the information they give us to draw one triangle or two triangles, or it is possible that the information they give us actually does not make a triangle. So you're either going to have no triangle, one triangle, or two triangles. When it's no triangle, we'll do an example of that in just a second. When it's one triangle, that means that you actually have a right triangle, and then if it's two triangles, that means that one is acute and one is obtuse. So we are given that angle A is 40 degrees, A is 4, and B is 9. We want to draw the triangle and solve for the values of the other side and angles. Now, it is possible that you end up with two triangles here, okay? So it's not going to tell you to draw the triangles, plural, if you have two. You'll have to know if it's a 1, a 2, or a none, okay? So it is possible that this information does not actually give you a triangle. So there are 5 possible figures that we could draw using this information. And we're going to start with the one that is a right triangle. So we're going to draw a right triangle, and we're going to hope that this information they give us is for a right angle, for a right triangle. And then that means that we only have one triangle to draw, and we can very quickly find the other missing parts. So we're going to put our 40 degrees and our 4 opposite of each other, okay? And then the 9 I'm going to put here. Okay, so now the first thing that we need to do is to see, does the sine of 40 actually equal 4 over 9? Well, does the sine of 40 equal 4 over 9? I'm going to multiply by 9 and plug in 9 sine of 40. And I get 5.785. Does that equal 4? Obviously, those are not the same. So what that means, I do not have a right triangle, because if it had been a right triangle, then the sine of 40 would actually be 4 over 9. But since those don't match up, that means we do not have a right triangle. Now this number is actually bigger than our 4 here. This side length is actually supposed to be 5.785 with the rest of the decimals there. And so what that means, when I have my 40 degrees, my 4 is only going to come down to here. And I have this thing, or this side that I don't know what it is, but do you see how I'm missing this part right here? I don't have a long enough side to make a triangle. So this would be an instance where you actually have no triangle. That does not make a triangle, and so that's all you would put for your answer there. So you're going to start by drawing a right triangle, and you're going to put your side and your angle, and you're going to try and solve and see if it makes a right angle. If your answer that you get here is greater than the 4 that they gave you, or whatever number that is, then that means that it does not make a triangle. If they're equal, that means you have a right triangle, and so you just have one triangle and you find it. Okay, so now we're going to look at where we have 2 triangles. So again, it just says draw the triangle and find the missing parts, but we are actually going to have 2 triangles on this one. Okay, so this is what it'll look like if you have 2. You'll start by drawing your triangle, and we're hoping that it's a right triangle. So I'm going to put the 27 and the 5 because they are a pair because they're both A, and then I'm going to put the 7 as my hypotenuse. And so I'm going to check, is the sine of 27 equal to 5 over 7? Well, does 7 sine of 27 equal 5? I get 3.18. It's not a right triangle, but this number is less than 5, so that means that we do have 2 triangles. The 2 triangles that you have, one of them is going to be an acute triangle. That's not a very good acute triangle. One of them is going to be an acute triangle, and one of them is going to be an obtuse triangle. Okay, so we didn't have a right triangle, we have 2, either an acute or an obtuse. So fill in that we have a 27 and a 5 and a 7 there, and then we have a 27, a 5, and a 7 here. And that 3.18, I'm going to draw it and then I'm going to erase it. But that means that that's the height here. If I had solved for that, that number is going to be less than 5 because it's not the hypotenuse of either of those triangles. And so that's what that 3.18 is. Same thing over here. It's going to be this side length here. That's going to be your height, the 3.18. And the 5 is your hypotenuse, so that height would have to be less than the 5. Okay? So that's how those heights come into play. So now we're going to actually solve for our missing parts. So I'm going to label this angle B, this angle C, and that's side C. And then this is going to be angle B, angle C, and side C. And so you're going to have 2 triangles, and you're going to have 2 values for angle B, 2 values for angle C, and 2 values for side C. So we can use the law of sines to find your information. We're going to have 5 over 27 equals 7 over the sine of B. So I have 5 sine of B equals 7 sine of 27. And then I can divide by 5. So the sine of angle B, you would do 7 sine of 27 divided by 5, and you should get 0.636 if you round it. And so then you do the sine inverse of that number. Make sure to use the whole number that your calculator gave you, remember? And so I get that it's 39.46. And this is an acute triangle, so it's an acute angle there. And so that would be our B value. Now over on this one, this is not an acute angle, it's an obtuse angle. So we're going to do 180 minus the 39.46 to get our B value. And so you should get 140.54 for that B value. Okay, so you have 2 different values for your B. One is the acute angle and one is the obtuse angle. Before, they've always given us a picture, so we know whether it's supposed to be the 39 or the 40. But on this one, they don't give us a picture, so we have to do for both of them. Okay? So now that you know what B is, you can find C because your angles always add up to 180 degrees. So we know we have 27 and 39.46. So 180 minus the 27 minus 39.46 gives you that C is 113.54. Okay? So that would be our C value, which means that that actually is also an obtuse triangle, not an acute triangle like I drew it. But that's okay. I just didn't draw it to scale very well. For this other one, we know that our B is 140.54 and our C is 27. So if you subtract that, we get that C would be 12.46. And so that is an acute angle there. And so now the last thing that we need to do is to solve for our side C. So we can use the law of sines again. So I'm going to say 5 over sine of 27 equals side C over the sine of 113.54. And so I would have C times the sine of 27 equals 5 times the sine of 113.54. And then you can divide by the sine of 27. And so C, if you plug that into your calculator, should give you 10.10. You have 0.96, so that 6 rounds that 9 up to a 10. And then over on the other triangle, you would do 5 over the sine of 27 equals C over the sine of 12.46, because that's the C value here. So you have C times the sine of 27 equals 5 sine of 12.46, and you're going to divide by the sine of 27. And so if you plug that into your calculator, you're going to get a different C value, and it is 2.38. And so that would be your answer. So you'll have 2 triangles drawn, and then you'll have these 6 values. Now, if you would like, you can draw your triangle and put the information in your triangle. So if you would rather put it all in a triangle and circle that instead of having a triangle drawn and the information, you can. It's really up to you which one you prefer, but you just need to have a drawing of the triangle, and then you have to have the 3 missing values for whichever number of triangles that you have. So hopefully that helps you a little bit with the ambiguous case. On your homework, you do get to omit number 19 and 20. So make sure that you do the rest of those for homework tonight, and then we can go over any questions you have tomorrow.